resisting the urge.
Now that you said it, it's all I can think about. All right, introduce yourself.
My name is Rob E Boyle, and I'm an author of dark fantasy fiction.
All right, where are we right now?
We are at Imaginarium in Louisville, Kentucky.
All right, how's your convention been so far?
It's been really good. I've met a lot of cool people. Saw my first Filking concert. Been on some awesome panels and just been having a blast.
Explain what filking is real quick.
So Filking is like kind of like parody folk music in a way. It's they kind of use Weird Al Yankovic as an example, which I could see. But I guess it has like a heavy sci-fi fantasy influence. The lady that's here actually was really awesome. It was a fun show. She did a lot of like Lord of the Rings inspired songs. It was good stuff.
Originally, it was a lot of Star Trek stuff. Did they do a lot of that, or was it mostly other stuff?
It was mostly more fantasy. I mean, it was just the one gal doing her stuff.
Cool.
But yeah.
All right. What other conventions have you done? Like you've done a few.
I've done Context. I've been at Antioch Writers Workshop. What else? Midwest Writers Con. I think that's about it. Seems like I'm missing a couple, but yeah.
That's fine. All right, tell about your book there.
So my series is The Scary Tales. It features mashups of fairy tale characters and classic horror monsters. It starts where the Snow White fairy tale ends with the prince kissing Snow, except she wakes up as a deranged zombie.
Which one's the first one?
First one is That Risen Snow.
Okay, and that's the one with Snow White?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what begins that way. Okay.
And then it's actually going to be a 9-book series.
Cool.
As it progresses, more mashups get introduced. The first 2 books are mainly Snow White and zombies. And then we bring in like Little Red Riding Hood and werewolves and Phantom of the Opera and Beauty from Beauty and the Beast. Goldilocks and the Mummy, that one will be coming out in October or November.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so by the time it's done, all the classic Universal horror monsters from those old movies will be used because I love that era of horror.
Are you with a particular publisher or are you independent?
I'm with Stonegate Inc. out of Idaho.
Okay, how'd you get hooked up with them?
So I got hooked up with them through the Antioch Writers Workshop I attended a few years ago. And the way that one works is in the afternoons you have like these intensive sessions with a particular author in like a small group setting, and I was lucky enough to be in Les Edgerton's group. He's a crime noir writer. He also wrote Hooked, which is pretty much by my reckoning like the one of the like pound for pound the best book on writing you can get. Like if you want to know how to like tell a story that's gonna grab people, read Hooked.
What's his name again?
Les Edgerton.
Okay.
Great writer, a lot of fun, and he just, we kind of hit it off that week. We closed the bars every night, and he said that he would, he'd keep me in mind and he'd put my name out there, and like almost a year later, I'm just sitting at another conference for work, and I get my phone rings and it's Les. He's sitting with his publisher Aaron Patterson out at Stonegate Inc. They're at a writing convention, and he had mentioned my book, and I pitched it to Aaron right there over the phone, and sent him the manuscript a few days later, and he.
So you had the first book completed at this point?
I had, yeah. I actually had like the first 2 books. What would be originally these were basically one solid book, and we ended up splitting it up into 2 separate volumes. But yeah, I already had the first book done at that point.
Okay. And how did the process work after that? Like you got connected up with them, and then they signed on for the whole 9-book series?
Yeah. We went into contract, and we signed on for the whole series. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have plans for after that? Like, have you thought of what you're doing outside of that series or beyond? I'm
working right now on another novel. Like I don't want to just get to the end of the series and be kind of done. Like I'd like to have something else in the works already. I finished one book a few months ago, and then just kind of like put it down. Like I just like once I got there, I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'll come back to it. Maybe I won't. And now I'm working on something I feel like's a little better idea. So yeah, I'm always working on short stories and other things. And I'm working on a coloring book right now. I'm from Dayton, and there's a great artist up there, Amy Kohler Anderson, and her stuff is real, kind of like surreal. Mm-hmm. Definitely fantasy, but there's sort of a dark edge to it sometimes. Right. And it's a really good fit for the type of stuff that I write. And we were on a panel. We're both alumni of Wright State University, and we were on an alumni panel together, and we got to talking. She bought my books, and loved them, and then we got to talking like we should really collaborate on something. So we're gonna try and do a coloring book. I'm writing it. She's gonna illustrate it. And that should be out hopefully within like the next year or so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Now, is Risen the first novel you'd written?
No. Well,
okay.
First I published for sure. Not the first. I mean, I've written probably before that 3 or 4 books that just never did anything with.
Okay.
1 or 2 of them I made.
You just let them go like they were the false starts, or?
Yeah, I think the first 2 were like learning experiences for sure. And it was kind of just getting your confidence and figuring out what works. I suppose I could go back. I mean, I would have to like rewrite them from scratch. I mean, I think there's some good ideas there, but nothing I'm going to do anything with anytime soon. One of them I could totally at some point see going back to, but again, I would just scrap.
You like restart the idea?
Yeah.
One person just made a comment about the illustrator you're talking about for the comic book, said she was a great local illustrator, so she must have a little bit of a following going.
I think she does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
She's been. I mean, I've been aware of her work for years. It seems like, and she just made the transition. I think in the past year or so. She was working out at the Rosewood Art Gallery in Kettering, which is a suburb of Dayton, and then she quit that to just focus full time straight up on her art. And she's always out there. She's in different galleries. She's really good at like putting herself out there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, at what point did you decide that you were pursuing this? Because there's a difference between someone was talking about one of the other illustrators. There's a point where like, okay, I'm writing these novels and just seeing where they go, and then there's a point where you're actually going to writing conferences and stuff. So at some point there, you made a decision that I'm being a little more serious about this. I'm about to try to pursue this. So what was that transition for you? Like
when it went from like hobby to this is something I want.
Yeah, because like there is a difference between
Sure.
A lot of people are writing a book at home, but then you were going at conferences and you were really beginning the networking process, whether you maybe thought about it that way or not. But what was that transition?
I don't really know. I think I've always written back even like high school, but it was mostly poetry. My daughter was born in 2005, and that's when I started writing fiction. Like something about becoming a dad. Like suddenly I had stories to tell, and it was pretty soon after that I went to Antioch Writers Workshop for the first time. So I don't know. I guess I just it was something that I've always felt like I've been good at, and something about being a dad and being a little more rooted at home kind of gave me like either the maturity or just the discipline, I don't know, to actually crank out a book, and it was just something I wanted to get better at, and that's why I started going to stuff like Antioch, and then I a few years after that I like 2 consecutive years in a row I won scholarships to the Antioch Writers Workshop.
Oh, cool.
Which was really nice. And that kind of also gave me like, I was like, well, okay, if I can do that, like I've got some talent, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I can do something with this.
I may have something going here.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so with the fairy tale stuff, was that where that came from? Like you were thinking of stories in terms of being a father, and then you took it into the darker direction with
and stuff.
Or?
I mean, this came from when my daughter was like 4 or 5, and little kids just like to watch the same thing over and over and over again, and she got hooked on Snow White, and so we were like seriously watching it. We were watching it like 2 or 3 times a week, and like yeah, if I see the same thing over and over again, like I start to see the little dark edges, and it just popped in my head like, what if she woke up as a zombie? Like what, because it seemed to me like kind of like, it's like, well, that's weak. Like why go through all this trouble to make this cursed apple and and do this horrible dark magic, and then it can be cured with a kiss. Like it's like it would be a whole lot more sinister if that was like psych.
It's like the vent and the Death Star or whatever. It's such an obvious weakness. That
seriously. So yeah, and I mean it started as like I just thought it'd be a fun little like short story, but as I got to working on it, I was like, well, there's actually more of a story here.
Figured out it was going to be a 9-book series.
That just happened. Yeah, I mean, it went from like a short story to a novella to a full-on book to, okay, it'll be a trilogy. But then once you start using some of those characters, once you get into like, the werewolves and the vampires and it's like, I want to use them all. Like Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Mummy. Like I love those classic horror monsters. I don't know.
It's funny, people. You find like the storybook fairy tale themes in horror a lot. Like there's
Sure.
anthologies will pick up on that theme a lot, and a lot of folks don't see the darkness in them all the time. You know, like
Yeah.
because there really is like especially the further back you trace them, the darker
Oh,
they get
hell
in
yeah.
terms of like there's
Brutal.
there's a lot of cannibalism and a lot of murder and a lot you know all these things that do have historic connections to very, very dark times that people
yeah.
just we've tried to sanitize down to something. But even like even when you think about Disney Disney sanitized everything.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at that, and that may be the one you were watching, if you go back and look at the Snow White, which was one of their first movies,
Yeah.
it's still pretty freaking dark.
It scared the hell out of my daughter. The first time we watched it.
We have an image of what it is because of over time the Disney movies became tamer, with society. But you go back to early Disney and like the Snow White movie is really dark. Like there's a lot of edge to that like a modern audience just watching it for the first time would be like, this is a Disney movie? What the?
Yeah, the scene where she's running through the woods and like there's all the trees or like these dark hands reaching for it, like that really freaked my daughter out. And, like, and Maleficent is like a serious that's some dark stuff, bringing down the fires of hell and I mean there's some those early Disney movies are not tame.
So if you watch that enough times, I guess it did put some images in your head. All right. Well, I appreciate it, man.
No, thanks for
good interview.
Chatting.